Your gut knew before your eyes did. Something felt off the moment she walked in. The room noticed her. You noticed her. And for the next 8 months, you convinced yourself that what you felt was attraction. It was not. It was your survival instinct trying to warn you. And you ignored it. Most men do. This is not a video about tattoos. This is a video about pattern recognition, about the signals your nervous system picks up before your conscious mind has time to rationalize them away, about why some men keep finding themselves in the same painful situation with different women. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. He wrote that men judge by appearance because everyone sees what you seem to be, but few know what you really are. Tattoos are appearance, but they point toward what is real. What I am about to share comes from studying the intersection of human psychology, evolutionary behavior, and power dynamics. The thinkers we will draw from today did not care about being polite. They cared about being accurate. Machiavelli studied how people reveal their true nature through their choices. Robert Greene mapped the patterns of human behavior across thousands of years. Arthur Schopenhauer examined the will that drives all action beneath the surface of conscious thought. These men understood something most people avoid. Every decision leaves evidence. Every choice tells a story. And permanent choices tell permanent stories. The question is not whether you should date a woman with tattoos. The question is whether you understand what you are looking at when you see them. Most content on this topic falls into one of two traps. The first trap is outrage. Tattoos are bad. Women with tattoos are damaged. Avoid them at all costs. This approach feels satisfying, but teaches nothing. It creates enemies instead of awareness. The second trap is denial. Tattoos mean nothing. Judging anyone for their appearance makes you shallow. Everyone deserves unconditional acceptance. This approach feels virtuous, but leaves men vulnerable to patterns they never learned to see. Both traps share the same flaw. They treat the surface as the whole story. What we will do instead is go beneath the surface. We will examine what psychology and philosophy reveal about the relationship between permanent body modification and internal states. We will look at what studies suggest without pretending those studies prove more than they do, and we will build a framework for discernment that serves you whether the woman in question has tattoos or not. Because the goal here is not to give you a rule. The goal is to give you sight. Schopenhauer argued that the will is the fundamental force driving all human behavior. Not reason, not conscious choice. The will. He believed that what people call their decisions are often just rationalizations for impulses they do not fully understand. This matters because tattoos are not primarily rational decisions. No one sits down with a spreadsheet, weighs the long-term implications, calculates the social and professional costs, and then schedules an appointment. That is not how it works. Tattoos happen in moments, emotional peaks, emotional valleys, turning points, breakdowns, breakthroughs. They mark internal states that demanded external expression. The ink is not the point. The moment is the point. And that moment reveals something about how she processes experience, how she handles intensity, and what relationship she has with permanence. Robert Greene wrote in The Laws of Human Nature that people cannot help but reveal their character over time. The mask slips. The truth emerges. But some truths are written right on the surface for those trained to see them. Here is the first thing to understand. A tattoo is a permanent decision. By definition, it cannot be undone without significant cost and effort. This places it in a specific category of human behavior, the category of irreversible action. Now, consider this. What does it reveal about someone when they make irreversible decisions during emotional states? Machiavelli would say it reveals their relationship with consequence. He advised that a wise man must always consider what moves he is making and what future situations those moves may create. A person who makes permanent choices based on temporary feelings has not mastered this principle. This does not make her a bad person, but it does make her a certain kind of person. A person whose internal processing may not align with the stability and foresight required for long-term partnership. Some men reading this will object. They will say that spontaneity is not the same as recklessness. They will say that one tattoo made at 22 does not define a life, and they will be correct. But we are not talking about one tattoo made at 22. We are talking about patterns, and patterns only emerge when you look at the whole picture. Over the next 36 minutes, we will examine 11 risk patterns, not rules, patterns. Each one will be grounded in psychology and philosophy. Each one will include the nuance that most content in this space ignores. But before we continue, understand this. The purpose here is not to make you suspicious of every woman you meet. The purpose is to make you aware. Awareness is not cynicism. Awareness is simply seeing what is there instead of what you wish was there. Nietzsche wrote that the most spiritual human beings experience their hardest difficulties as privileges because their life tests their strength. Consider this video a test, not of her, of you, of your ability to observe without reacting, to learn without becoming bitter, to develop standards without losing your humanity. If you can do that, what comes next will change how you see the world. Now we begin. Remember what we established. We are not looking at tattoos. We are looking through them, at the psychology beneath, at the patterns that repeat across thousands of relationships, at the warning signs that most men only recognize in hindsight. The first 3 risks share a common thread. They all involve the relationship between past and present, between who she was and who she claims to be now, between the story she tells and the story written on her skin. Risk number 1. Her history is not behind her. It is on her. Every tattoo marks a moment, a decision, a state of mind. When you date her, you are not dating who she is today. You are dating every version of her that felt compelled to make that mark permanent. That quote on her ribs might look like poetry. It might be a survival mechanism. That date on her wrist could be a milestone worth honoring. It could be an ex she never fully released. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the aspects we bury because they are too painful or too shameful to integrate. He argued that what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. Consider this. What if the tattoos are the shadow made visible? What if the ink is the unconscious demanding to be seen? This is not about shaming her past. Everyone has a past. The question is whether she has processed that past or merely decorated it. There is a difference between a woman who has done the work of healing and a woman who has marked her wounds without closing them. Both may have the same tattoo, but one has moved through the experience. The other carries it like open luggage, spilling into every new relationship. You will know the difference by how she speaks about it. A woman who has healed discusses her past with distance. A woman still living in it defends her past with intensity. Watch her reaction when you ask about the meaning. The answer matters less than the energy behind it. Risk number 2. She may be wired for resistance, not partnership. Many tattoos arrive during what could be called the destruction phase, the breakup, the betrayal, the moment when everything she trusted fell apart. The ink becomes a declaration. I answer to no one. I belong to myself. I do what I want. Machiavelli observed that people reveal their true nature most clearly in moments of crisis. How someone responds when their world collapses tells you more than years of ordinary interaction. For some women, the tattoo was a healthy reclamation of agency, a marking of survival, a line drawn between who she was and who she became. For others, it was the beginning of a pattern of defining herself by what she opposes rather than what she builds, a pattern of mistaking destruction for strength. Robert Greene warns about this in The Laws of Human Nature. He writes about people who become addicted to the drama of conflict because peace feels like stagnation to them. They need resistance. They need something to push against. Without an enemy, they feel lost. If her identity is built on rebellion, ask yourself what happens when there is nothing left to rebel against. What happens when you offer stability instead of conflict? What happens when you give her peace? The uncomfortable answer is that she may create conflict just to feel alive. This is not theory. This is a pattern men describe repeatedly. He treated her well. She got bored. He offered consistency. She manufactured chaos. He provided safety. She went looking for danger. Not because he failed, because her nervous system was trained to interpret struggle as love. Risk number 3. She requires constant visibility. Some women do not fade into the background. They command rooms. Eyes follow them. Attention finds them without effort. And for some men, that becomes the entire attraction. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. He understood that what appears desirable to many is often precisely what should be avoided. Consider what it means to build a life with someone who needs to be seen. Someone whose sense of self depends on external recognition. Someone who feels diminished when the spotlight moves elsewhere. In the beginning, her visibility feels like a prize. You are with the woman everyone notices. You feel chosen. But attention is a resource that must be continuously renewed. What happens when you are tired? What happens when you want a quiet evening? What happens when her need for recognition exceeds what your presence can provide? Schopenhauer argued that the two enemies of human happiness are pain and boredom. A woman addicted to attention has made boredom her enemy. She will do whatever is necessary to escape it, including destabilizing a peaceful relationship. This is not vanity. This is architecture. Her psychology was built on a foundation of external validation. The tattoos are often part of that architecture. Markers designed to attract the gaze. Conversation starters that ensure she is never invisible. The question is whether you can provide enough attention to sustain her, and whether you want a relationship that demands that effort. These first 3 risks share a theme. They point toward the relationship between her internal world and her external presentation, between what she shows and what she carries. But the next pattern goes deeper. It addresses something most men do not want to hear. What if chaos is not a phase for her? What if it is home? What I am about to share makes people defensive. It challenges assumptions that feel safer to protect than to examine. But you did not come here for comfort. You came here for clarity. So let us go where most content refuses to go. Risk number 4. She may have learned to confuse pain with love. Tattoos hurt. This is not incidental. For many people, the pain is part of the purpose. It transforms the experience from decoration into ritual. The suffering makes the mark meaningful. For some, this is a healthy relationship with discomfort. A recognition that growth requires difficulty. A willingness to endure for something permanent. For others, it is the beginning of a pattern that extends far beyond the tattoo parlor. Freud observed that humans possess what he called the repetition compulsion, a drive to recreate familiar experiences, even painful ones, especially painful ones. because the nervous system seeks what it knows, not what serves it. If she grew up in chaos, stability will feel foreign. If her formative relationships taught her that love comes with suffering, peace will feel suspicious. If pain became her pathway to feeling alive, she will seek it again and again. This is why some women describe their healthiest relationships as boring. Not because the man failed to provide, because her internal wiring could not recognize care without crisis. Robert Greene addresses this in his work on seduction. He warns that some people are drawn to what damages them. Their pattern of attraction is inseparable from their pattern of destruction. You will see this in how she responds to your consistency. A woman who has healed this pattern will receive your stability with relief. A woman still trapped in it will receive your stability with restlessness. Watch what happens when things are good. Does she relax into it? Or does she begin manufacturing problems that did not exist before? Risk number 5. She may not know who she is, and she may expect you to figure it out for her. Some tattoos mark identity. Others mark the search for one. When the tattoos keep coming, when each new piece signals a complete reinvention, when her aesthetic shifts every few months from minimalist to spiritual to aggressive to refined, you are not witnessing self-expression. You are witnessing someone who has not yet found solid ground. Nietzsche wrote about the process of becoming who you are. He saw it as a lifelong work of self-creation. But he also warned against those who mistake movement for progress, who confuse change with growth. There is a difference between a woman evolving and a woman escaping. Evolution has direction. Escape just has motion. When you commit to someone whose identity is permanently under construction, you are not building a partnership. You are chasing a moving target. Every time you adjust to who she has become, she becomes someone else. This exhausts men in ways they struggle to articulate, because it is not a single problem. It is the absence of foundation. The feeling that nothing you learn about her today will still be true tomorrow. Schopenhauer understood this. He wrote that the person who does not know what he wants will not be able to want what he gets. If she cannot define herself, she cannot choose you with clarity. And you will always feel that uncertainty, even when she swears she is committed. Risk number 6. Her circle reveals what her words conceal. No one exists in isolation. We absorb the values of those we surround ourselves with. Our standards rise or fall to meet the people we spend the most time with. Machiavelli wrote that a prince is known by the company he keeps. The same applies here. If you want to understand who she really is, look at her closest relationships. What does her inner circle value? What behaviors do they normalize? What kind of drama fills their conversations? If her best friends are perpetually in crisis, that is not coincidence. That is selection. She chose those friendships because something in them felt familiar. If her social environment treats chaos as entertainment, treats loyalty as optional, treats commitment as restriction, those values will bleed into your relationship, whether she consciously holds them or not. Greene observed that we are more influenced by those around us than we would ever admit. The pull of the group is stronger than individual intention. You can date a woman who seems different from her friends, but over time, the gravity of her social world will pull her back toward its norms. This is not about controlling who she spends time with. This is about understanding what you are actually integrating into your life. When you commit to her, you commit to her world. Her friends become part of your experience. Their values become forces you must navigate. Their influence becomes a factor in your daily peace. Jung called this the collective unconscious, the shared psychological inheritance that shapes individual behavior beneath awareness. Her tribe carries a collective unconscious of its own. And you are not marrying her in isolation. You are joining that tribe. These patterns may already feel familiar. You may recognize them from relationships you chose not to examine too closely at the time. But we are not finished. The next segment addresses something even closer to home. What these patterns reveal about your own psychology. Why certain men are drawn to these dynamics repeatedly. Because the hardest truth is never about her. It is about you. Everything up to this point has been about her. Her patterns, her psychology, her risks. But here is what separates men who learn from men who repeat. The willingness to ask the harder question. Why are you attracted to this in the first place? Nietzsche wrote that when you stare into the abyss stares back into you. You came to this video to understand her. But understanding her without understanding yourself leaves you exactly where you started. Informed, but unchanged. Aware of the pattern, but still trapped in it. So let us turn the lens. If you have dated this woman more than once, the common factor is not her. The common factor is you. Your selection. Your tolerance. Your attraction. Something in you responded to something in her. And until you understand what that was, you will keep responding to it again. Risk number 7. You may be drawn to what damages you. This is not about her. This is about the architecture of your own desire. Jung wrote extensively about projection. The way we see in others, what we refuse to see in ourselves. The way we are drawn to people who carry our own unprocessed material. Consider this carefully. If chaos keeps finding you, chaos may live inside you. If you keep choosing women who cannot offer stability, some part of you may not believe you deserve stability. The women you select are mirrors. They reflect back the relationship you have with yourself. A man who values himself chooses women who value him. A man who doubts his worth chooses women who confirm that doubt. Not consciously. The pattern operates beneath awareness. Schopenhauer argued that the will reveals itself through attraction. What you are drawn to exposes what you want at the deepest level. Not what you say you want. What you actually pursue. If you say you want peace but keep choosing chaos, your will has spoken more honestly than your words. There is another pattern that traps men. The need to rescue. Some men are not attracted to dysfunction despite its difficulty. They are attracted because of it. The broken woman activates something in them. A sense of purpose. A feeling of being needed. A role that gives their life meaning. Freud would recognize this as a form of repetition. Often these men grew up in households where they were responsible for managing someone else's emotional state. A parent who could not regulate themselves. A family system that required a child to become a caretaker. That childhood role becomes their adult attraction. They seek women who need saving, because saving is the only way they know how to feel valuable. But here is the trap. A woman who needs saving is not available for partnership. She is available for rescue. And rescue is not a relationship. It is a project. Green writes about the dangers of this dynamic. He observes that people who position themselves as saviors often end up drained, resentful, and eventually abandoned. Because once she no longer needs saving, she no longer needs the savior. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, the work is not finding a better woman to save. The work is understanding why you need to save anyone at all. Some men are not drawn to peace because peace feels like death to them. This is the adrenaline trap. The confusion of intensity with intimacy. The belief that if a relationship feels calm, something must be missing. These men describe stable women as boring. They feel more alive in conflict than in connection. Their nervous systems were calibrated for high stimulation, and anything less feels like absence. Marcus Aurelius warned against being a slave to impulse. He understood that what feels compelling in the moment is often precisely what destroys us over time. The passions, left ungoverned, lead men toward their own ruin. If you cannot sit in peace without manufacturing drama, the problem is not your selection of women. The problem is your relationship with your own nervous system. You have trained yourself to need intensity, and you will keep selecting for it until you retrain yourself to tolerate stillness. So, here is the question that matters more than any list of red flags. What are you actually looking for? Not what sounds good, not what you tell your friends. What do you pursue when no one is watching? What do you tolerate that you swore you would never tolerate again? Epictetus taught that we cannot control external events, but we can control our response to them. He was correct, but he did not go far enough. Because before response comes selection. You choose what enters your life before you choose how to respond to it. If you keep selecting chaos, your standards have a leak. Somewhere in your value system, there is a gap that keeps letting the wrong pattern through. Finding that gap is your work, not hers. The next segment returns to her, but now you carry a different lens. You are no longer just evaluating her patterns, you are watching how your own psychology responds to them. This is how men break cycles, not by finding perfect women, by becoming the kind of man who no longer needs imperfection to feel alive. Now we continue. But you are not the same person who started this video. You understand something you did not understand before. That observation is never neutral, that what you see in her reflects what lives in you. That judgment without self-awareness is just projection wearing a mask. With that foundation, let us examine the remaining patterns. Risk number 8. Her relationship with permanence may be fundamentally different from yours. Studies have examined the correlation between tattoos and impulsivity. The findings are consistent. Higher numbers of tattoos correlate with higher measures of impulsive decision-making. This is not judgment. This is data. But data requires interpretation. Machiavelli distinguished between two types of action: calculated moves made with future consequences in mind, and reactive moves made from immediate emotion. He argued that success in any domain requires the discipline to delay gratification and consider long-term effects. A woman who makes permanent decisions based on temporary emotional states has revealed something about her internal architecture. She processes experience differently than a man who plans, waits, and considers. This does not make her wrong. It makes her a certain kind of partner. The question is whether that architecture aligns with yours. If you are a planner, and she is reactive, every major life decision will become a negotiation between fundamentally different operating systems. Some couples navigate this successfully. Many do not. The friction accumulates. The planner feels unseen. The reactive partner feels controlled. Both are correct from their own perspective. Know what you are choosing. Impulsivity in small things often predicts impulsivity in large things. How she chose the tattoo may mirror how she chooses everything else. Risk number 9. She may use her appearance as a filter designed to eliminate you. Some women do not wear their tattoos as expression. They wear them as armor, as a barrier that pre-screens every man who approaches. The message is clear, even when unspoken. If you cannot accept this, you do not deserve access to me. Robert Greene writes about strategic self-presentation, about how people craft their external appearance to achieve specific social outcomes. The tattoos become a loyalty test administered before the first conversation ends. This creates a dynamic where you are perpetually proving yourself, not through character, not through action, through acceptance of her terms without negotiation. Freud would recognize this as a defense mechanism, a way of controlling vulnerability by demanding unconditional approval as the price of entry. The problem is that unconditional approval is not intimacy, it is submission, and relationships built on submission do not produce partnership. They produce resentment that accumulates silently until it explodes. A woman secure in herself does not need you to prove loyalty before knowing you. She allows connection to develop naturally. She evaluates you based on who you are, not on whether you pass her entrance exam. If every interaction feels like a test you might fail, you are not building a relationship. You are auditioning for a role that will never feel secure. Risk number 10. Her self-sufficiency may have no room for you. Independence is valuable. The ability to stand alone, to meet your own needs, to function without requiring another person to complete you. These are signs of maturity. But independence has a shadow, and that shadow is isolation disguised as strength. Schopenhauer wrote about the porcupine dilemma. A group of porcupines huddle together for warmth in winter, but their quills cause pain when they get too close. So they must find a distance that provides warmth without injury. Some women have solved this dilemma by eliminating closeness entirely. They call it independence. They frame it as empowerment. But it functions as a wall that no one is allowed to scale. When she says she does not need a man, believe her. Not because she is unworthy of partnership, but because need is the vulnerability that allows bonding to occur. Interdependence requires mutual need. I need you in certain ways. You need me in certain ways. This exchange creates the fabric of partnership. A woman who has armored herself against needing anyone cannot participate in that exchange. She can share space with you. She can enjoy your company. But she cannot let you matter in the way that partnership requires. Hobbes understood that humans form bonds out of mutual necessity. We are not built for isolation, and those who insist they need nothing from anyone have not transcended human nature. They have walled themselves off from it. Risk number 11. You may be a chapter, not the story. Some women collect experiences like others collect objects. Each phase of life brings new aesthetics, new values, new relationships, and each transition leaves the previous phase behind. If she met you during her healing era, you may represent that era. Not her, the era. When the era ends, so does your relevance. This is not cruelty. This is architecture. A woman whose identity is built around constant transformation does not have room for permanent fixtures. You become part of the scenery of a phase she will eventually outgrow. Lamarck theorized that organisms adapt to their environment and pass those adaptations forward. But what happens when the environment is internal and constantly shifting? She adapts to who she is becoming. And if who she is becoming does not include who you are, adaptation means leaving you behind. We have covered 11 patterns, 11 risks, 11 ways that permanent choices can signal impermanent foundations. But information without integration changes nothing. So let us bring this together. Not as a list to memorize, as a lens to carry forward. This was never about tattoos. Tattoos are visible. That is their only distinction. The patterns we examined exist in women without a single mark on their skin. The chaos, the identity instability, the resistance to peace, the addiction to intensity. None of these require ink to manifest. What tattoos provide is evidence, a record of moments, a map of decisions made under specific emotional conditions. But the psychology beneath the ink is the psychology beneath all human behavior. Learning to read it in this context trains you to read it everywhere. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man learns from the misfortunes of others because there is not enough time to make all mistakes yourself. You have just studied patterns that take most men decades to recognize. Patterns they learn through pain because no one taught them through wisdom. You now have what they did not. Awareness before consequence. How do you use this? Not as a filter that rejects every woman with a tattoo. That would be the easy path, and the easy path produces shallow men who mistake rigidity for standards. Use it as a framework for deeper observation. When you encounter these signals, slow down. Ask questions. Watch how she responds to your attention. Notice what her choices reveal about her internal architecture. Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. These patterns operate beneath awareness, yours and hers. Bringing them into consciousness is how you escape their gravity. The next time you meet a woman who commands the room, ask yourself what you are actually attracted to. Is it her? Or is it the intensity she provides? Are you choosing a partner? Or are you choosing a feeling? The next time you notice the rebellion in how she presents herself, ask what that rebellion is aimed at. Is she fighting an external enemy? Or is she fighting the possibility of peace? The next time you feel the urge to rescue, stop. Ask why her damage activates you. Ask what you are trying to prove. Ask who taught you that your value comes from saving those who did not ask to be saved. Let me show you what exists on the other side of this work. There is a version of you who does not need chaos to feel alive, who can sit in peace without manufacturing drama, who recognizes dysfunction immediately and feels nothing but clarity about walking away. This man does not hate women. He understands them. He does not fear their psychology. He reads it with precision and compassion. This man chooses partners based on alignment, not attraction alone. He values character over chemistry because he learned that chemistry without character is poison that tastes sweet. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. The same applies to relationships. The quality of your partnerships depends on the quality of your selection. And selection is a skill that can be trained. You are training it now. Every pattern you recognize strengthens the muscle. Every red flag you see clearly prevents a wound you would have carried for years. But this knowledge carries weight. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot return to the comfortable ignorance that allowed you to blame circumstances for patterns you chose. From this point forward, your selections are conscious. If you choose chaos now, you choose it with awareness. If you tolerate dysfunction now, you tolerate it by decision. Epictetus taught that freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and it is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You cannot control who she is, but you can control who you allow into your life. That control is your freedom. Exercise it. Let me leave you with this. The woman you choose will shape the life you build. Her patterns will become your environment. Her psychology will influence your peace. Her capacity for growth will determine whether your partnership expands or contracts over time. This is not a small decision. It is among the largest you will make. Schopenhauer wrote that the two enemies of happiness are pain and boredom. But he missed the third enemy, the wrong partner, someone whose presence creates more suffering than their absence would. You deserve a woman who has done her work, who has faced her shadows instead of decorating them, who can receive your love without suspicion and offer hers without conditions. That woman exists, but you will not find her if you are still entangled with the patterns we discussed today. So do the work. Examine your own attractions. Question your own tolerances. Raise your standards not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. And when you find her, When you finally meet a woman whose presence brings peace instead of chaos, you will understand why this work mattered. Not because she is perfect, because you became capable of choosing well. That is the transformation. That is what this video was always about. And that is how men break cycles that lesser men repeat until they die. Philosophy without application is entertainment. It makes you feel wise without making you different. So let us take everything we have discussed and bring it into the moments where it matters. The first conversation, the first month. The decision points where most men operate on instinct instead of awareness. What do you actually look for? What questions reveal what words conceal? How do you observe without interrogating? When she tells you about her tattoos, listen less to the words and more to the energy. A woman who has integrated her past speaks about it with calm. She can discuss difficult experiences without reliving them. The emotion has been processed. What remains is understanding. A woman still trapped in her past speaks about it with intensity. The story activates her. You can see it in her body. The tension returns. The defenses rise. She is not remembering. She is revisiting. Machiavelli observed that men reveal themselves most clearly when they believe they are concealing. She thinks she is telling you about a tattoo. She is actually showing you her relationship with her own history. Ask simple questions. What made you choose that one? How old were you? Would you choose it again today? The content of her answer matters less than its quality. Does she reflect or react? Does she own the choice or defend it? Does she laugh at her younger self with affection or explain her younger self with justification? These distinctions reveal everything. Early in any connection, there will be a moment of calm, a pause in the intensity, a stretch of days where nothing dramatic occurs. Watch what she does with that space. A woman capable of partnership will settle into peace. She will not need to fill silence with noise. She will not interpret your stability as disinterest. She will recognize calm as a gift rather than a threat. A woman wired for chaos will become restless. She may pick small fights. She may withdraw and wait for you to chase. She may manufacture urgency where none exists. Robert Greene noted that people cannot maintain masks indefinitely. Time reveals truth, but you do not need years. You need observation during the right moments. Peace is a test she does not know she is taking, and her response tells you whether your nervous system will find rest in her presence or remain perpetually activated. You will meet her friends. When you do, observe without judgment. What do they talk about? What do they celebrate? What do they complain about? How do they speak about men in general and their own partners specifically? Plato understood that environment shapes character. The people she surrounds herself with represent the norms she has accepted, not necessarily the values she speaks, the values she lives inside. If her friends treat relationships as adversarial, she has normalized that lens. If her friends discard men casually, she has witnessed that pattern hundreds of times. If her circle rewards drama and punishes stability, those incentives operate on her whether she recognizes them or not. You are not evaluating her friends as people. You are reading the culture she chose to inhabit. That culture will influence her long after the initial chemistry fades. At some point, you will need to say no. You will decline a request. You will hold a line. You will demonstrate that your approval is not unconditional. This moment is diagnostic. A woman with healthy self-worth will respect boundaries even when she dislikes them. She may express disappointment. She may negotiate. But she will not punish you for having a spine. A woman whose identity depends on control will escalate. She will frame your boundary as rejection. She will test whether you will collapse under pressure. She will treat your self-respect as an obstacle to overcome. Albert Ellis, the philosopher of rational behavior, argued that emotional disturbance comes not from events, but from our interpretation of events. A boundary is just a boundary. How she interprets it reveals her internal architecture. If your no becomes her emergency, you have learned something essential. You have learned that her stability depends on your compliance, and compliance is not the foundation of partnership. It is the foundation of servitude. Finally, watch what she builds, not what she dreams, not what she talks about, what she actually constructs with her time, her energy, her choices. A woman oriented toward the future invests in things that compound: skills, relationships, health, resources. She delays gratification because she understands that the present serves the future. A woman trapped in the present consumes without building. She prioritizes experience over investment. She speaks about tomorrow but lives entirely inside today. Nietzsche distinguished between those who create and those who react. Creators impose their will on the world. They shape circumstances rather than being shaped by them. Reactors move through life responding to whatever arrives without direction of their own. You want a creator, someone whose life demonstrates the discipline and vision that partnership requires, someone who has built something before you arrived and will continue building alongside you. The tattoos may or may not be part of that story, but the story itself is what matters. You now have both the philosophy and the practice, the patterns to recognize, the questions to ask, the moments to observe, the self-awareness to examine your own participation. This is how cycles break, not through bitterness, through clarity applied with precision. Go forward and choose well.